right, everybody. We've got another very special guest, a returning special guest for you all this week. Welcome to the show, Benjamin Morse. Welcome, Benjamin.
Thanks for having me back. Great to be here.
I'm glad to have you back. I love talking to you last time. Obviously, was a big fan of your last project and looking forward to this new one. So let's jump right into it. You got August Purgatory Underground, book one on Zoop right now.
Mhm.
What's this book all about?
So it's kind of a throwback to your sort of '80s cartoon franchises mixed with some Star Wars, and basically we're taking a character that's a very black and white, good and evil type, hero, and putting him in like a slightly more complicated situation. So basically, there's a long civil war. It's been going on. It's raging throughout the galaxy. Captain August is kind of a hero in the tradition of Luke Skywalker or Dick Grayson, a very by the book, good guy. Finds himself in the center of a big controversy when he accidentally sets off an enemy weapon that destroys Mars. So, as the war is winding down, he's finding he can't stay in the service. A lot of his old allies have turned against him, and his villains that he had faced for most of the war, that people thought were gone, are actually hiding out and waiting to get their revenge on him. So it's kind of a story of a character growing up a little bit, having to find a new environment, trying to move on with his life after this war, and also good sort of swashbuckling adventure.
So it sounds to me right off the bat that we have some similarities to We Are Scarlet Twilight, your previous project, in that it's kind of an old school hero set like put into a more modern lens. And it seems to me like you're jumping. So you went from doing kind of a Captain America-esque hero with We Are Scarlet Twilight to now my other favorite thing, which is Star Wars-esque heroes, and throwing them into it. So, is that a correct assumption? What you're trying to do here?
It is. When I looked at We Are Scarlet Twilight, I actually had done August before We Are Scarlet Twilight. I'd been developing it for a decade, and the book that we're putting out now was actually finished before I even came up with Scarlet Twilight. We just kind of had some pandemic-related delays, getting it out to stores and everything, and so we're just really trying to get some momentum built back up for it. But the process, as it ended up, was a lot the same. With Scarlet Twilight, I kind of looked at, all right, I want to do this Captain America type hero. I want to have a lot of the imagery from the Golden Age of comics. I had some themes I wanted to put in there. And I've always described it as kind of like I'm putting these puzzle pieces on the table and figuring out what combination of them, works. August was the same thing. I look at a lot of the stuff we've gotten, like the Netflix version of He-Man that was not terribly well received, or the new Star Wars sequels, or the Star Trek Picard series, which kind of was really illustrative because it kind of did a very different thing people didn't like, that kind of veered back into almost fan service type stuff. The thing I was trying to do with August is provide the kind of experience I think those reboots or revivals try to provide, which is you want something new, but you also want it to feel like the old stuff made you feel. I think that's kind of an impossible task when you're bringing back older franchises. So I kind of came up with a story that I think worked, and then put all this '80s stuff kind of back into it. So hopefully that's, by flipping it around a little bit, you'll still get a fresh story that feels exciting and new and interesting. But you're also going to get a lot of things that remind you when you were reading Transformers comics or G.I. Joe comics when you were a kid, or watching Star Wars stuff. So it was kind of an attempt to take the nostalgia idea and find ways to put that together, and gives you a good experience, a good kind of roller coaster ride of fun.
Yeah, definitely, and it makes sense. I know I've heard this from you in the past, but it makes sense that this was made before We Are Scarlet Twilight, because one of the first things when I saw it initially was like, wow, that was quick. Because the last issue was recent, a few months ago, I believe. Is that correct?
Yeah, of Scarlet Twilight.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Did you do
actually, I think the last issue came out Yeah, we did. So we did that on the crowdfunder for that, and that was issue 4 and the expanded hardcover with all the extras in it. The direct market version is actually, I think, just hit stores this preceding Wednesday. So that's wrapping up there, and we're making some plans to do a direct market trade of that as well. But yeah, it's so this collection I'd wanted to do for a long time. because I developed it for so long. I have so much extra artwork and fun stuff I put together, and it was cool to, have a product that could include all that stuff, and you can kind of share all the things that roads I didn't go down or but have artwork for as far as the story is concerned, and really just share kind of what that decade of developing a story was like a little bit.
And had this come out in single issues anywhere, or did you just make the decision to go straight to OGN with it?
No, we did do a direct market version with Red 5 in 2022, and it was just a rough year for anything new, so it didn't do quite as well as we'd hoped. And that's also one of the reasons I'm doing this, is I kind of want to get just get some more eyes into character, and hopefully I have a lot more stories planned with him and want to do them. So I really doing everything I can to, obviously want to get the book out there, but I also just kind of want to raise the character's profile a little bit. While as much as I love Scarlet Twilight, August is my favorite of my creations. I have a lot of ideas where I could go with the story. A lot of other artwork drawn, and so I really kind of want to get that one up to where Scarlet Twilight has performed.
Yes, I mean, science fiction is such a great genre, and that can go so many different directions, and that it seems to be always a favorite with creators to kind of create a sci-fi world and then go into it. So you use Zoop
It's one of those things that Comics does so well.
Yeah, definitely.
Well, sorry.
I think we have a little bit of a delay, so I'm sorry everybody out there if we're talking over each other a little bit.
Yeah, I've noticed that. I waited for a second, and then
yeah, so I'll try to keep that in mind moving forward. But for We Are Scarlet Twilight, the hardcover, you did Zoop, and now you're doing Zoop again for this. I think we talked about it a little bit last time we chatted, but why Zoop?
Well, I'd been talking with them for a while, and when I did the campaign for Scarlet Twilight 3, there were a lot of delays. That it wasn't any one dramatic thing. I did have some traveling I had to do unexpectedly for some family issues, but I looked at the whole process and thought, in addition to writing and drawing and creating these books myself, to run the campaign really just ended up being a death of a thousand cuts sort of thing. It was just a little bit too much from a time perspective to do. So for 4, I went over to Zoop and had a great experience. They handle so much of the stuff for the campaign, pretty much almost everything. And the other sort of thing that's great about it is they're doing all the behind the scenes stuff, talking to printers, finding, sourcing things, handling fulfillment. So it was a huge help for me to just concentrate in the books and have them do that stuff. And obviously they're great with, promotion, and they're also great comics people. These are guys that have worked with a bunch of the, IDW, a few other companies, and they know the comic book business inside and out, in addition to being really great with the crowdfunding world. So I kind of went with them, I'd say mostly for the time issue, just to take a little bit of that burden off of me and have more time to write and draw, as opposed to running the campaign. But, I found it was a really great fit and was happy to bring this campaign over there.
Yeah, I've been enjoying watching what they're doing as a commentator and a viewer. I've noticed some things as a consumer that I'm curious about behind the scenes. And one is that fulfillment is definitely longer on Zoop campaigns than they are on. I mean, Kickstarter's hit or miss. It depends on the creator, all that. But I've noticed long fulfillments. With yours in particular, not to call you out, because I have read your updates and I do know it's coming, but you have not fully fulfilled We Are Scarlet Twilight yet. Has that been because of Zoop? Is there something behind the scenes that just takes them a little bit longer, or?
No, I wouldn't say that. I do think that we've had without getting too far into it, I don't think it's Zoop's issue at all, really. The printer we kind of started with, there was a little confusion on the files I sent for the hardcover. Basically, they were a little confused which page was which, and I had to deliver different files because obviously the front cover of your hardcover is like a glossier, different print, is a little bigger than the pages. And then you have that sort of inside page. So there was a little bit of a holdup there. I think we delivered the files late spring. It's certainly a long time ago. And there was a little bit, I think, of a delay in just when the printer was communicating with us. But I'm hoping we have that kind of ironed out. And I'm certainly hoping with August, now that we've been through that process where they're like, hey, what file is this? Is this the front cover, the back cover? We should be able to just hit the ground running there and be ready to go with that. We've got all the files done and over there. So hopefully now the communication's working a little better with the printer. We should be hopefully off to the races pretty soon. As far as Scarlet Twilight goes, I think we're waiting on proofs to approve. I've checked in a few times with that, and we're waiting to get those. And once we approve that, they should be on the presses and out the door.
Awesome. So it sounds to me like it's fairly normal, quote unquote, issues that have delayed at least your project a little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So
yeah, I would say it's normal. There's no dramatic story, unfortunately, but I would say when I was doing Scarlet Twilight by myself, I worked with the same printer each time, and the first time super fast turnaround, super fast communication. The second time it was like, I'd have to keep sending messages, and it took a while to get a response, and then the printing process took a little bit longer as well. So I think that's probably something, having seen it in a few different places and certainly heard other creators talk about, there's probably just something inherent to the printing business that gives you those different experiences sometimes. I know a lot of printers have busier seasons where they have some more evergreen stuff. Like I'd heard one creator talking about working with, I don't know if it was Mixam or Comic Impressions, but they said the bigger printer that's attached to it, when it was like yearbook season, like nobody was getting anything printed except the yearbooks. So I think there's some ebb and flow that I don't quite understand, but have certainly observed the printers kind of going through.
Well, I've also heard from creators behind the scenes that doing trades and especially hardcover collections is a different beast. And when you've done floppies, and you can correct me if I'm wrong here, but you've never done a hardcover before on your own, it's a learning process too, that you're trying to figure out something you've never done before.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And that may be true. This is, like you said, the Scarlet Twilight would be the first hardcover I ever sent out. And August is going to be the same format. So it could just be that takes a little longer to, I don't know the exact ins and outs of their pre-press stuff. And then obviously getting the mock-ups made, or that entails. But yeah, I've certainly found it's a little more complicated, obviously, than just doing your floppies.
Yeah, definitely. So going back to August and your Zoop campaign, let's go ahead and pull it up, and we can kind of look through it. As you can see, if you're watching, this is Sunday before the interview launches, so we're a little bit over halfway in the funding. But you've got a lot of the basic stuff that you come to expect: a hardcover, PDF, it's signed, you get a remarked, and all this. And then you're doing the original art printed pages again that I think we talked about when we are Scarlet Twilight. And talk a little bit about the campaign and what you got going on here.
So as far as what you're seeing there, yeah, we have those. We have the digital version. We have some options as far as you can get the autograph version. You can get a remarked version where I'll sketch, a character in there. And then obviously those prints, which was a great idea Zoop had, and I was really happy that did so well in Scarlet Twilight. As far as what we're offering in the campaign, it's a little over 200 pages hardcover. Got a little over 100 pages of the story. That's issues 1 through 4. And then there's these extras that I was really excited to be able to put in there. I have a 13-page story that actually those 2 pages you just scrolled past were part of, that were from different drafts I had done over the years of August. And it's a completely different scene that I ended up not using. But I was kind of surprised to find that looking at even different pitches from years apart, the story worked and still made sense, and also worked within the larger world of the final 1 through 4 issue story. So that's in there. And then as you're seeing, there's a lot of ancillary artwork I've done over the years just to promote it, or just for fun, to really flesh out not just August's world and like concept art type things, but you've got a lot of art here that I kind of did like what he would look like if he was a cartoon in the 80s. What if they tried to bring him back in the 90s and he looked like a Rob Liefeld character with a mullet and the headband and stuff like that. And it was kind of fun to do, but the thing I really like about having it in the hardcover is I hope it'll give you that feeling that, I have these sort of mock-up versions of cards that we might do down the line that are from like the 80s, 90s trading card sets. And I kind of want you to feel like this was something that was around in the 80s and 90s and you just sort of forgot about it, like the Silverhawks or, something like that. And hopefully, it gives you that impression. It makes you feel like this has been around a long time and it's a continuation of a larger story. Hopefully, just gives you not only fleshes out the world that the characters live in and their conflicts, but also, the way we interact with these franchises and stuff, and the memories we have of like, oh, that was the art box, that was the art on the box from the place that I had, or on the lunch box I really liked. It was fun to create that stuff, and I hope it kind of fools us a little bit into feeling like this had been around, for a long time, and we'd grown up with it.
It shows me even before talking to you about the project, it shows me the love for the project, because like I look at some of these things, and I'm a little bit younger than you, but also I grew up on a lot of that stuff because of my father's love for that stuff and what he kind of gave to me growing up. And like this right here reminds me of the old novels that I used to read from my father's collection. Like these, this was something that was outside of my fandom, but like you see the old GI Joe set, so I love that.
Yeah.
And then looking at some of the concepts, like this looks like a concept for a Star Wars comic, like a Luke Skywalker comic or something.
Oh, yeah.
Just everything here just is so awesome. I love all the attention to detail and love for it.
Yeah, you don't create all this nonsense unless you're really into it. So that's why it happened that way.
Yeah, and then much like the Scarlet Twilight campaign, you have like the preview of what it will look like, and just beautiful hardcover. I love the spine. That's one thing that a lot of crowdfunding campaigns, I think, fail to understand, is the cover is important, and you should have a nice cover. You shouldn't judge a book by its cover, but we do it every day. But what we need to find a saying for the spine, because as comic collectors, I mean, right behind me is the bookshelf. I'm going to see the spine more than anything else. So to see that cool, unique spine, I think is really important.
Yeah, that's something I definitely agonized over. I'm most of my collection's digital now when I'm reading new stuff. Just, I lived in New York City for a few years, and I kind of learned to conserve space and get along without that stuff. When I'd start to talk to people while I was out there promoting Scarlet Twilight, and watching videos, and if I was going to go on a channel, I'd watch some of their other stuff, and I'd see, like how important that was to people. Like they'd be like, this new omnibus dropped, but the logo doesn't line up with the previous 3 editions, and it really upsets me. And I'm like, yeah, it would upset me too. It's not something I would have thought of on my own, not being a big collector. But I realized how important that was to people, and that's the other reason I really wanted that design, the spine, to look great. Is I have at least 4 of these series planned out, and I really thought about, like, when I have all 4 of these done and it's on somebody's shelf, hopefully, it's going to look, there's going to be a logic to it. It's obviously going to like line up and be, designed the same, but there'll be hopefully a little bit, there'll be the villain up top and a picture of August in the bottom, and it'll be like a cool, and I'll kind of keep the colors going in the same direction, so it'll look, if all 4 of these are done someday and on somebody's shelf, they're going to look really awesome, lined up 1 through 4.
Yeah, the logo things, I'm not huge in like really paying attention to logo, but it is irritating when, like, I'm just gonna use Image, but Image logo is like just a hair off from the others. So like it just kind of dips on one of them when you have all of them in a row. Or the one I hate the most, and I know Marvel fans gonna pick on DC, but DC changes their logo every 2 months. So
and they had a perfect one in the 80s.
Yeah. And there's I'm going to forget the creator's name, but there's a Sandman compendiums that they were doing back during the New 52. So it had that like page flipping DC logo on it.
Yeah.
And then they just stopped printing them after like volume 2 or 3. And then they started printing them again with the newest logo in the past like 3 or 4 years. So now you either have to rebuy the whole thing as someone who like does that, or someone who doesn't have all the money in the world and can't do that. I now have 3 with one logo and the rest with the other logo, and it's so irritating.
I've seen a bunch of pictures of people who will collect. I think it's the Marvel omnibuses, or some kind of collection. I think it's called Epic Collection or something like that. And they would, and I understand there's some printers go out of business. There's paper quality changes. You can't get the same materials you did last time. So if it was something where like it was the same design and every effort was made to make it look as close as it could, but maybe the the gloss is a little different because they just couldn't get the chemicals they needed to, or something like that, or life happens. If that, I'm talking though, those are things that would maybe provide like a slight difference, or maybe because the material is a little different, the one's a little taller. We're talking like no more than an eighth of an inch off.
Mhm.
And the pictures I'd see of some of these Marvel ones would be like, it was clearly like the same design, more or less. They had the same elements, but they had kind of like made the title, go up above the logo, or just like a complete, like there was no reason to do it sort of a thing. And then people would have pictures of like 5 books that looked one way, and then the next one was just off, and then the rest of them continued as were, and it drove them nuts. And like I said, I could see why.
Yeah. Yeah, I'll throw shade at Marvel real quick just to be fair, but because I do love, I mean, I love both companies, but I'm known as a Marvel fanboy. But yeah,
Mhm.
Marvel like will print anything.
Mhm.
So I think at some point they just don't care about that, and they're just like, just get it to the printer. And I see that a lot, especially with omnibuses. Like you said, I don't have a ton of omnibuses, but none of
Mhm.
them, none of the spines are the same.
Yeah, and like I said, I could see if it's like, hey, we have this opening to get this logistic. I mean, I'm not like making excuses for them,
Yeah.
but stuff happens. Materials change, especially post COVID. We do a lot of work in my day job for a place that's a chemical distributor, which is so they'll provide raw materials for almost any manufacturing process or product you can think of, and they've had the stories they've told about how hard it is to get some of the sort of chemicals that are the building blocks of stuff we use all the time. You can't find it. When you find it, it's a slow process getting it from where it needs to be, point A to point B. And I'm sure that sort of thing exists in spades for printers as well. There's probably a lot of logistical stuff that we don't know about that makes it hard to make everything the same time frame all the time, the same materials all the time. I can excuse some of that, but when it's just like a totally different, like, reorganization of the design, I'm like, oh my god, that's crazy. So definitely want people to know that those 4 books are going to look as close to each other as they possibly can in terms of design. I really looked at that spine a long time because I thought, dude, you bet this is not something where you can wake up in a month, look at it with fresh eyes, and say, I wish I had put the logo up here and the picture down there. Like, it's got to stay the same.
Yeah, and I think he did. I mean, judging from the image on the Kickstarter, I think he did a great job with it because
Thanks.
I love it. I mean, I'm with collect, especially with hardcovers, because I'm not one to really. I don't like go out of my way just to get the hardcover.
Mhm.
If I can get a collection of something, I just get it. But when I do get a hardcover, like that, the spine for some reason just always sticks out to me, and it's
Yeah.
everything we just talked about. So there is a reason, but it's so important, and I just think that a lot of, especially independent creators, and I think some of that is just time and money
Mhm.
and all that, and some of them are writers, not artists, and so on and
Yeah.
so forth. But when you just give me a black spine with the name of the book on it, it's like, oh
Yeah, or it's like in the impact font or something like that. Oh,
yeah,
it drives me up the wall. I mean, I'm a graphic designer, so that part of the process is really important to me. And kind of to go back with what I was saying about all that extra artwork that's kind of intended to make the story feel like it's been around a long time. The characters have been around a long time. The design is, I think, another opportunity to really make you feel like this is a I hope it looks very like a very modern take on 80s inspired design. So when you're reading this, I want it to feel like when I have an Art of He-Man book back there somewhere that just like the design's great. It feels like a totally polished thing, and really reinforces how cool that franchise is and how important it is and how long it's been around. And kind of trying to bring the design of the book for August that to that level. I hope kind of just gives you another thing I can kind of wrap that experience in and make it feel like it's important, like you have a connection to it, and it's just one of the tools we kind of have to do that with.
yeah. Do you worry at all that when this is funded and it gets out to people, and you start working on volume 2, that you have to then recreate this for volume 2, or do you look forward to that, finding how to
Oh
like
no,
one up volume 1?
no, I think, well, that's kind of interesting. So volume 2 is going to be a lot of fun. I think it's probably, when I'm all done with it, going to be like the most crowd pleasing one. But the next one I'm going to do is number 4. So it takes place about 50 years after Purgatory Underground. It's kind of a Dark Knight Returns kind of scenario. In the galaxy, while it's during Purgatory Underground, it's like a civil war is ending, so there's like still civilization and stuff like that. But by the time we get to book 4, like society has collapsed. It's almost like The Walking Dead, but in space. And it's a very different environment. I think it's going to be a lot of fun to do book 4 next, so that you'll know how August's story kind of ends and where his character is going and where the world he lives in is going. It's going to be a lot of fun to go back and do 2 and 3 when you know those things about, kind of where it's going overall. So I think I'd always had the 4 stories planned out, and I found myself fleshing out each of them and really finding myself more drawn to the last one, to the one where he's an old man. And the more I thought about that, I love in the 80s when I would read Dark Knight Returns in year 1 and then go back and read my monthly Batman comics, knowing I know Batman or Dark Knight Returns isn't canon, but kind of knowing where he was meant to go, at least that version of the character, and they could drop hints to it, really made that experience of reading the single issues a lot deeper and a lot more. There's just more texture to it. So I think it's going to be really fun to do 4. And then when you're going to read 2 and 3, you're like, is this when this is going to happen to this guy? Is this when this is going to happen to Earth or to the world? Like that's going to be, I think, a fun way to do it. And I think probably a more suspenseful way to do it. Knowing a few spoilers as far as the overall story is concerned, I think is going to give the scenes in the middle a lot more tension.
Yeah, definitely. But I think what I was trying to get to was all the the little extras, doing the play set image and all that, like one-upping that. Is that something you look forward to?
Oh, I look forward to that. And it's going to be different stuff. I think there's still going to be very 80s-ish stuff for all of them. But I think that as we go to, volume 4 is going to be a much different world. And I'm going to probably create things that have to do with some of those influences. Things that remind you of Mad Max or zombie movies and stuff like that. For the next volumes 2 and 3, it's going to be kind of he sort of becomes a space pirate. So you're going to see a lot of stuff that, kind of goes down that road as far as the extras are concerned. And that's the kind of stuff I love doing, because it gives me a chance to create, different art and different styles, which I really like to do. And also gives me a lot of chance to design cool stuff in ways I normally wouldn't get to do. So it's a challenge. I'm concerned about it, but that's the kind of thing I really love doing. So more than anything, I'm looking forward to it.
Well, my mind immediately goes to, and you can have this one for free, is like Star Wars Black Series figures, where they just redo the old figures. and it kind of doing like, this is what is coming out in 2024, but it's Luke Skywalker from New Hope, and instead just it's August from book 1. Yeah, stuff like that.
Yeah, I love the alternate takes on stuff, and it's fun to for Purgatory Underground, which, like I said, really brings in a lot of 80s, a lot of Transformers, a lot of He-Man, a lot of G.I. Joe. It's really fun to do artwork. I'll find some piece of art that I remembered from mine as a kid and be like, oh, I could do like an August thing like that it doesn't copy it, but kind of just puts you there a little bit. And that stuff is so much fun to do. It's I wouldn't even call it work.
Yeah, it's funny to me, going back to where we started, that I was drawn to your work with We Are Scarlet Twilight. Like, I saw the influence and connection to a character that I have read for most of my life and loved. And then to see your second work, your piece of work, or technically this is your first, but for me, it's your second. Going to the other thing that's been with me since I was a little kid, and I'm a huge fan of to this day. I mean, we're recording this on Sunday, August 20th, and I'm giddy with excitement over Ahsoka coming out soon. So it's really cool for me to have found you as a creator and really enjoyed that first book, and to see the next one coming. And it's just, once again, something that almost feels like it was created for me. Have you found that a lot with the consumers going out there, or am I one in a million?
I think so. I think, when I looked at this, it's a character I didn't like sort of plan out, well, what would be a cool thing to do, or what would people like? Because if you've seen this artwork, you probably know I love Star Wars as much as anybody. But I kind of looked at it with, like, I wanted to do kind of my version of a Star Wars type thing, but it's got to be a little different. I wanted to have it. There's a lot of Battlestar Galactica in the look of things here. There's a lot of the color you'd see in Voltron and He-Man and Transformers. Star Wars is kind of earth tones and not a huge amount of color that you'd see in kind of more toy based franchises, which is awesome. I mean, Star Wars is the way it's supposed to be. But I kind of wanted to, if I was going to do something like that, think of like, okay, what's a good mix of things that we haven't quite seen together before in quite that way. And I kept going back to, like I said, those 80s cartoons. And, it's weird when you're a kid, or at least when I was a kid, you didn't just like play with Star Wars toys, put your Star Wars toys away and play with He-Man toys. They were just all fighting each other, So
No.
this stuff it makes sense to me looking back and kind of reflecting on that to mix those influences together. In fact, one of my favorite toys when I was a kid was a G.I. Joe paratrooper guy with like camo pants that broke, and I mixed him up with my Robotech Rick Hunter, and he was like the coolest looking toy in the world. So I like the idea of taking those visuals and put them together, and then I thought that works. That's kind of what I did anyway when I was a kid. So hopefully it feels natural to kind of do my take on Star Wars, but have so much of this other stuff kind of brought into it.
Definitely. And sorry, I got some in my eye all of a sudden, but so I'm not crying, everybody. I just got some in my eye. So you said earlier a little bit that Red 5 had published this originally in a couple of years ago, and was there? Well, were there copies like do you have copies of the single issues? And I guess the B to that was there any thought of like selling the single issues as part of the Zoop campaign?
We did think about it. We kind of ran out of time planning wise to sort of put that together. But we do have some extras of that. I'm probably going to look at, just obviously we're going to, I think, sell them on red5.com or Red 5 Comics, but might go to some conventions. I've been to conventions. I never tabled at one. So that might be a chance for me to get out there and try doing a little bit of that and seeing how that goes.
Yeah, 'cause I think people seeing this now and it being more wide, once people get eyes on the art and obviously knowing your previous work, I think people would be interested in single issues at some point. I know I definitely am. But
Yeah. Well, I think you can get them at Red 5 Comics, if I'm not mistaken, and I think that probably your shop could still order them too. I'm not sure if they're still in Diamond or if they're going to do another shipping of that, but we do have some copies of that left over. It would have been cool to put them in the campaign, but we couldn't quite work everything out in time, and then we thought let's just keep things simple. The Scarlet Twilight 4 campaign was so complicated in terms of like, well, we had you had to be able to get older copies of issues 1, 2, and 3, but I had 1, 2, and 3 here. 4 we had to get printed all new because it was the campaign for 4. Then we had all the hardcover stuff, and it was just like I think I was pretty happy to just have this campaign be pretty much just the hardcover and then the add-ons.
Yeah, then you don't have to mess around with, well, this person got the hardcover and issue 2 and 4 because that's what they're missing for their collection. And
Yeah, but there's definitely ways to get it, and I think I may do some updates on the campaign if we, while we may reopen it before we print, and then maybe there's a chance to include that then too.
Well, if I can find that link, everybody, I'll put that in the show notes so you can check out the single issues as well. But definitely go to the campaign. Benjamin, I think I've said enough that that I'm excited for this. I hope that everybody else gets excited for it. We still got about a week when this launches for the campaign. And I have faith that you're over halfway. We can get the other half in this week.
I hope so. It's been a rough month for crowdfunding, but I wish I had launched in July, but we've got some time to turn it around, and I think we will.
Yeah, definitely. So if people out there want to follow you and the campaign further, where's the best place to send them?
The best place to look for the campaign is zoop.gg. You can also find me on Twitter. I'm always posting about this at Benjamin W. Morse. And you can find me on, you can find August on Facebook under August Comic. And, pretty much just look around do a search on YouTube, Instagram. We're there too, but mainly Twitter and Facebook are the best 2 places.
And everybody out there, you know how it goes. Links in the show notes for the campaign, and I'll try to find that Red 5 website as well, so you can see the store there to pick up hopefully some August books and maybe even the We Are Scarlet Twilight issues if you haven't jumped on that the billion times I've told you to jump on it.
Yeah.
So Benjamin, thanks so much for joining me today, talking about the book. Like we said a bunch of times, really excited for it, and best of luck with the campaign, man.
Thank you for having me on, and thanks for that.